What is a punishment your parents used to do to you that at the time you thought was normal, until you got older and realized it was abuse? When I was young, my dad would take apart my doorknob and lock and put it on backwards, so he could lock me in my own room. He would let me out only to let me go to school, and to use the bathroom once a day. I'd also only get food once a day, in which they would open my door, toss me some food, then lock it right back up. I got used to him doing that, so I kinda thought it was normal. Looking back, I realize it was incredibly abusive. I thought all parents were strict or supposed to be strict. Didn't realize until I started to grow up that that didn't always mean verbally abusing your kid. My parents were very strict. I never got verbal abuse, but I also never got positive affirmation. I never knew if anything I did was okay. Breaking my stuff. But one time, my mother grabbed a Nintendo 64 game of mine and used a pot to bust it up. The game survived, the pot died. She tossed the game in the dumpster. I snuck it out. My stepmom used to do this too. I didn't do chores one day, so she grabbed my Xbox, with Halo in the drive, and TV by the cords and dragged them to the curb for trash day. They were both irreparable. And then, she took scissors to my system of downed CDs. Had to hide my CD player to mitigate damage. My mom always hated the fact that I had online friends and would laugh with them on mic. One day she told me to turn off the computer for some reason. She was insanely mad and kept shouting at me until she took the monitor and smashed on the ground. Next day I packed my shit and went live with my father. I have no idea why, but my mother had a thing about us drinking water at times. I would be outside playing and come in saying I was thirsty, and my mother would put her finger on my tongue to feel it, and say that I was fine, I guess because I still had saliva. She didn't always do it, just sometimes. This was in the 80s, and I've come to learn that she was always pilled out of her eyeballs on prescription drugs at the time, and also suffered lifelong depression. It's just something that I think about sometimes. It seems quite cruel, but at the time I'd just go and drink out of the garden hose when she wasn't watching. This is odd, if only because who doesn't want their kid drinking water, unless they live somewhere like a desert? And it's not like water is expensive. Yeah, when I was a kid I thought it was normal, now I don't. I was in a small alpine town in New Zealand. The tap water was perfect and free. Whatever her motive was, it didn't have anything to do with cost or water quality. My mother was a good person with some serious issues. I can't make sense of some of her decisions. My father never physically disciplined us, even though he would threaten to do so once in a while. If he got really mad, he would go back to the bedroom and close the door. Then my mother had to deal with our problems. She never understood why he never took any initiative in correcting our behavior. After he died, my father's sister told my mother that his father used to beat him all the time. Then it made sense. Was avoiding repeating the cycle, I guess? That's gotta have been hard on him to want to be a good parent but not knowing how. I am so proud of your dad for trying to break this cycle the only way he knew how. What an amazing guy. My dad's thing was using his belt and making me take my pants down so he could whip my bare ass. I never thought much of it until my gym teacher pulled me aside one day and told me to skip class that day because I had cuts all down the back of my legs. It was the 70s, so nothing else happened. I guess for some reason he didn't want the other boys to see it. I got the belt on a bare ass until it was literally completely black with some red bits. Told the teacher at school once, and instead of looking or doing anything about it, they told my stepdad. Guess whose bruised ass got rebelted? Last time I ever tried to tell anyone. I would get in trouble for simply expressing an opinion if it was counter to what my parents thought. My dad's punishment of choice was the belt on the bare bottom. I'm female, and this went on well into my teens. He'd make me take off my pants and bend over the bed. It was as humiliating as it was painful. He was also the king of gaslighting, and would sometimes ignore me for weeks if I'd slighted him in some way. There were times he acted like I didn't exist and I'd have no idea what I'd done to upset him. It made me very insecure because I never knew what would upset him. Or sometimes something that I'd said that made him laugh one time would piss him off the next time I said it. So, I'd say or do things that had amused him before in a desperate attempt at gaining his approval, only to set him off and end up getting beat and or ignored. I thought all of this was fairly normal. I once told my dad I was calling the cops on him, and he so confidently told me to go ahead because they'd take his side and I'd be the one in trouble. I believed him. I thought this was how all families must be and that it was all my fault anyway. I was horrible for making him do these things. It wasn't until I was a teen that I kind of realized not all parents acted like that. So then I just thought I had strict parents. It wasn't until I was an adult that I realized what I'd endure was actual abuse. Yet I still felt weird calling it that. The fact didn't really hit home for me until I had my own kids. Then it was like someone finally turned on the light. That's when the therapy started. One time when I was a kid, my mom whooped me. Of course I was crying. She told me stop crying, only girls cry. So I tried but couldn't stop. She said, since you want to cry like a girl, I'll make you a girl. Went downstairs, grabbed the crowbar, and said, now stop crying. Every tear on my face disappeared at that moment. Was she really going to do that? I mean, wouldn't be surprised she was crazy. My mom also would be so enraged that she would hit us with whatever she could find. I am a girl. One time when we were teens, my mom chased after my older sister and me with the thick wood dowel from a paper towel holder, telling us that she was going to rape us. I think that may have been the time when my sister finally pushed my mom away to defend herself. I never physically fought back. When my sister and I were younger, about 4 and 7, she would pee her pants and I had trouble sleeping. My parents' solution to this was to make my sister wear her peed underwear like a hat on her head and only address her as gross pee head. They also decided the way to cure my sleeping problems was for my stepdad to drag me out of bed at 5 a.m. He'd make me march up and down the street, with no shoes, chanting, I will let my parents sleep at night. I will not wake people up. We'd do this for an hour or until I started to cry. He called them army days. I didn't realize how insanely abusive these things were until I was telling stories to a boyfriend of mine a couple years ago, and he got upset about my abusive childhood. It honestly seemed normal to me. The worst part is insomnia and wetting the bed are both common symptoms of child abuse. The parents likely caused the problems they were trying to correct. My mom would pretend to dial the phone and talk to CPS, asking them to take me away. Now I think she was actually just calling my dad at work so he could hear the argument. My mom used to pretend to call Santa. Not quite as bad, but still. I pulled this on my autistic cousin once. Not gonna lie, it was effective in getting him to chill out and open some doors for conversation. I don't know if I'd consider that abuse. CPS though. That's shitty. My ex-stepdad was weird. If I left a cup of soda out, he would pour the whole bottle down the sink. He would take away Christmas or birthday gifts if we were bad, whatever that meant. My things got taken away a lot. Feelings were frowned upon. He was super protective of my mom during a time when I needed her the most. I was 10 and my parents had just gotten divorced, and we moved a few hundred miles away. I remember maybe a month after we moved I had a massive ear infection. I was crying because it hurt so bad, and instead of comforting me he was just holding my mom, telling her how great she was. Like me and my siblings, any bad feeling we had just ruined her life or something. What made it hard was a lot of the things I was getting punished for were because I had severe, undiagnosed at the time, anxiety. Happy ending, she dropped his ass when I was 15 and her and I have an amazing relationship. My mom hated me being fat, so she would make me just eat iceberg lettuce while everyone ate real dinner. I would cry so much, but she'd say it's my fault for getting fat. She also would only buy me clothes way too small for me, probably hoping I would be inspired to fit in them, which sucked because every time I told her I didn't have clothes for school she would throw me down and beat me up savagely. She also made me go to stupid shit from exercise classes to acupuncture alone to find a cure for my chubbiness. I hated going and it made me hate myself even more. Finally, a thread I can comment on. In 7th grade we were talking about how our fathers would smack us etc. when we were bad. There was this kid who once told us about how his father would poke his and his little sister's butthole if they were bad. Meaning if they did something naughty his father would stick his finger up inside the kid's a-hole. At the time we thought it was so gross but not abuse, too young. Years later I'm in high school with him. He's a little withdrawn but he always was, to be honest. Never brought it up but I always remembered. Sorry there is no justice to this story like you may have wanted, at least to my knowledge. Do you have a similar story? Leave a comment and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this one.